We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back with Tim and Lisa Dunn discussing midterms and polling. As Tim, based on your analysis here and based on the enthusiasm divide that Lisa's just mentioned, what kind of numbers do you think we can see with seats changing hands?
Well, I think it's realistic for the Republicans to expect to pick up 20 to 25 seats in the House. The number was higher than that, but I do think that post-Roe enthusiasm on the left might cut into that margin because there's been a steep increase in women registering to vote across the country. That's going to cut the margins down in the House. I think they'd be happy to take 20 seats or 25. I think it's a matter of somewhere in there would be my guess. In terms of the Senate, the most I see Republicans doing is gaining 2 seats. That would be the upside. They could also lose a couple of seats. I think a lot of that really depends on, I mentioned earlier about Pennsylvania. Wisconsin is also in play. The Democrats actually leading the incumbent Ron Johnson there. And in Georgia, who knows what to expect there because Herschel Walker was way down. He was down in double digits. Now it's basically a dead heat with a lot depending on the single debate between Walker and the incumbent, who of course is Raphael Warnock, who got elected in 2020. So I see a pickup, and if I see a pickup for Republicans clearly in the House, and that they take control, if only because that always happens in midterms, the party out of power takes control of the House or gains a ton of seats. The Senate, Mitch McConnell was right. A lot of it does depend on the quality of the candidates. And I think Dr. Oz and Herschel Walker, in particular in Pennsylvania and Georgia, respectively, are the people that, if they can win, the Republicans will take the Senate.
Let me just interject one thing, and that is, if we're looking at Trafalgar, apparently Walker is pulling ahead and Oz is now within the margin of error. So I think these two are gaining, but you said 2 seats might come to the Republicans. What 2 do you think those are?
Well, I think it's looking really good in Nevada, where Paul Laxalt is holding, I wouldn't say a commanding lead, but a solid lead, and he's been ahead from the beginning. He's
got a good name recognition as well.
Yeah, and the Republican governor candidate for governor looks really solid.
I'd say Nevada looks like a solid choice for a pickup for Republicans. I'm not sure about New Hampshire. I just don't know what to make of those people. They say live free or die, and then they vote for Democrats. So what can you say? I think Georgia...
It's a New England thing, and you wouldn't understand.
If I can interject on that, Scott D. Cosenza, who will be joining us later for our Talking Liberty segment, he says that people in this area of the woods, the New Hampshire, they like to have statewide Democrats, but they like to have a Republican governor just so it doesn't go too crazy and affect their taxes.
And that's true with Massachusetts, too, which is far to the left of New Hampshire, but often has elected a Republican governor because they want to be able to stand and signal their virtue with all these left-wing positions that lead to fiscal recklessness. But by electing a Republican, they can make sure that they don't have to pay for all the things that they actually support.
Right. I'm just going to take issue with one thing that you said, Tim. Not that wives have ever disagreed with their husbands on anything.
Unheard of.
Ever.
Breaking news here on Liberty Nation. Right. A wife about to disagree with her husband.
But, you know, I'm not really sure that the abortion debate is going to have that much of an impact. Because if it was, when Rasmussen took the survey, they surveyed on abortion, crime, immigration, and climate change. They stayed out of economic factors, which is interesting because you have to figure inflation and all that goes strictly across the board. So like, what's driving you to the polls? If there were that many women and that many people that were really wanted to vote on the abortion issue, I don't think you'd have 64% of the Republicans saying they were very excited and 56% of the Democrats. And also, you have to look at the pro-life people, too. That decision is going to bring out that group as well.
Well, I think there was a 15-point gap in energy about the election between Republicans and Democrats before the Dobbs decision. Now it's down to single digits. So there's still an enthusiasm gap, but it doesn't favor the Republicans as much as it did before. I think abortion is an issue that's a big spring and summer issue because you're far away from the election and you're thinking bigger thoughts. But when it gets closer to the election, political behavior generally says that voters are focused on core issues, and that means economic and safety and security issues, not on climate change and abortion. So I think it's going to still diminish a little bit more abortion as an issue as we approach November 8th.
As you point out there, Tim, that abortion is not polling as high as other issues. But do you think perhaps that you have some people who are very, very pro-abortion, pro-choice, that are actually going to stay home despite the opportunity that they might have to end up with a codified version of Roe v. Wade because of the enormous drag factor of Joe Biden? Because he's really not very popular. And pretty much everything, he seems to have the anti-Midas touch, as in everything he touches turns to manure. Lisa,
in other words, do you see this as sort of a referendum? This election is sort of a referendum on Biden, Tim, or not?
Well, it's interesting because the Democrats are trying to turn it into a referendum on Donald Trump. Even though
I wrote an article on this.
Yes,
Who is the referendum on?
It's true.
They can't stop themselves.
It's a referendum on a guy
on.
that isn't president. So, they're trying. Look, if they really thought they had a good shot to win control of Congress or maintain control of Congress, Joe Biden would not be out there patently insulting and scandalizing 74 million people who voted for Donald Trump last time. It's a desperation move. And I think it's one that's going to backfire big time on him, just like the student loan thing, which I thought it was really interesting, Lisa. You talk about Trafalgar, the same man that you discussed said that he's never seen such a negative reaction to something as he has to this student loan bailout.
Well, I'm going to give you credit where credit is due, because you wrote an article saying early on this whole student loan thing is going to backfire on Biden. I wasn't really sure I thought maybe you were going out on a limb, but you were right. I mean, everybody, and now the CBO is coming out with real cost estimates. People are starting to freak out. And now they're talking about, legal issues, that this is just so flagrantly in violation of the Constitution.
It is.
It's a $400 billion price tag, apparently. You're listening to Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio America Network. Remember, you can tune into LN Radio from our flagship station in the nation's capital, WWRC in Washington, D.C. We'll be talking the slow demise of the Constitution later in the show with our Talking Liberty segment. But after this short break, we're coming back with Tim and Lisa Dunham to discuss the activist pollsters and poll takers. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Entertaining, informative, and just plain fun. Watch Liberty Nation's The Conservative Five. Produced by conservatives for conservatives. C5's The Left Free Zone. Hosted by Liberty Nation's Lisa K. Donner. Joined by a raucous, irreverent panel of authors. Deconstructing leftist narratives. Debating the hot topics. And remembering to laugh. Join the official conservative safe
You only
space.
did that to piss Jeff off.
Liberty Nation's The Conservative Five.